Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. So it's been a while. What happened at the end of Vlogmas is what I thought would happen, that I would get too busy and then not be able to have time to edit videos anymore. So that's what happened. And I'm okay with that. It's fine. I tried. But yeah, so and I still have like all of the end of beginning of year videos that I want to film, so that's fine. I'm just gonna have a sip of my peppermint mocha. So how are you? I hope that you're well. I hope that you all had a good Christmas. My Christmas was good, but it was very tiring. I was not energized at the end of Christmas. There were lots of people and I overdid it, and I didn't give myself enough introverting time to recharge, so that's what happened. But anyway, so this video is my Q3 wrap up, and I did not read too many books. Hey. So we're just gonna go through them. So in October, the first book that I finished was Severance by Ling Ma. Do you want to leave? You want to leave me? For real? Okay. Okay, bye. Chris is watching Bon Appetit videos, so I have to have the door shut. Anyways, okay, so the first book that I finished in October was Severance by Ling Ma. And this one, I'm going to try to quickly talk about my thoughts about the books. So Severance is kind of like a, I guess, post-apocalyptic book. Or it's kind of the idea of this fever taking over people, and they become like really mindless and repetitive. They don't so like someone will literally sit for a year and just sit in a chair with the remote in their hand, changing channels on a TV that isn't even turned on anymore because they don't have power in their house. So it's kind of like an examination of society shutting down like this. Like people, they get sick and then they just get stuck in these loops. And so I thought I was really going to like this book because it's like post-apocalyptic, or like, I guess, disease. Not necessarily that an apocalypse happens, but like this disease starts taking over. I thought I was really gonna like it, but there was something about it that didn't click for me. And maybe I'm just like dumb. There were things that I was thinking maybe were happening with how Ling Ma was telling the story. But like the story itself felt really repetitive, and as I was reading I was like, is it supposed to feel this way? Because this is kind of like what it's talking about. And there were just these things that I was like, am I just not catching on? Is this actually what's happening? Am I just dumb? But yeah, I just didn't like it as much as I thought I would. I guess I can get why people have been raving about it, but for me it just wasn't the best. The next book that I read was The Curious Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I just wrote Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, by Robert Louis Stevenson. And I actually had never read this before, and I quite liked it. I like Victorian literature, especially like that Gothic literature. Love it. And I listened to the audiobook narrated by Richard Armitage. I listened to a lot of books narrated by Richard Armitage in the last quarter of the year. Anyways, you'll hear his name a few more times. Yeah, loved it. I'm not even going to tell you the plot because it's very old, so I'm sure you're familiar with it. The next book that I read was The Road by Cormac McCarthy, another post-apocalyptic book. I read a lot of post-apocalyptic books this year as well. Anyways, so this one is like kind of a classic, and it's about a world we don't know what's happened, and it's just kind of, the world has burned, and it's about a father and a son. They're traveling south to get to more habitable land, and it's just following them in this burned society. And it's more about their relationship than anything. And 100% the reason that I was motivated to pick this book up, because I've heard about it for years and I know that it's a post-apocalyptic classic, but the reason that I finally picked it up was because I found out that the song No Sound But the Wind by Editors, which is on the New Moon soundtrack, which is how I became familiar with it, but it's a beautiful song. Absolutely love it. I found out that song was inspired by that book. So then I had to read it. And yeah, like, absolutely can tell that it's about that book. So I did enjoy my experience reading it. It's a very hard book to read. It's very, very sad and bleak. There's not a lot of hope in it. And there's some very distressing events that happen. But I did overall, I mean, I'm glad that I read it, and I might read it again in the future. I thought it was good. So there's that. Trying to be fast here. Okay. Then the last book that I read in October, that I finished in October, was By Chance Alone by Max Eisen. And I was gifted this book, I want to give away, by my lovely friend Erin. This book won the Canada Reads Prize in 2019. And so I actually read this with my book club. This was my suggestion, so we read it together. And this is a memoir of a man who, he is still living. I just got so distracted. I was like trying to read the back, trying to remember what it is, but it's a man, Max Eisen. He's telling his story of when he was a young, when he was a preteen / young teenager at the beginning of World War II, and how he and his whole family were brought to concentration camps, and eventually he ended up in Auschwitz. Auschwitz was the camp that he was brought to. But yeah, and it was absolutely horrible, the things that happened to him, but specifically for him, there were things that happened to him that, the book is called By Chance Alone, but I'm going to say God brought him through, and like, just these things happened that he shouldn't have lived through, but then like one tiny detail, just like seemingly by fluke, he survived these things that he shouldn't have survived. And so he made it through the end of the war. He obviously got out of the camp alive. And what I also liked was there's also a significant portion of the end, like maybe the last quarter of the book, is about him actually out of the camp and trying to resettle. And that is something that I've never really read a lot about, was people actually after the war trying to build their society back up again, because everything was just brought to like garbage. Everything was horrible. There were so many refugees and people that were displaced, and people like him that they don't have their family to go back to because they're all dead. Their home has been taken over, so they have nowhere to go. So they're trying to find a new life for themselves, which I didn't necessarily think about that in the past with stories like this. So I was really glad to have read this book and just that perspective. And yeah, I'm glad that I read it. I didn't enjoy it because it was hard, but I'm glad that that book is in the world. First book that I finished in November, but I was also like reading this over Halloween because I finished it November 1st, was Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. That was a reread for me, and I listened to the audiobook narrated by Dan Stevens, which was great. And this is one of my favorite classics. The story is very different from the kind of the pop culture notions that we have of Frankenstein, and I think just like the themes that Mary Shelley is exploring in this book are very interesting to me. Just themes about like humanity and what our responsibilities are to each other, and like uplifting that humanity, if that makes sense. Also, I like this painting on the cover. I like it. That has nothing to do with the story. That was totally just a squirrel moment. But yeah, I enjoyed this. I enjoy it a lot. I'll probably read it again in the future. Okay, the next book that I finished was The Joy of Less by Francine J. And I listened to that audiobook on Scribd, and narrator is Terry Schnabelt. That seems weird, but I guess it's right. Anyway, so it's kind of like the Marie Kondo method mixed with minimalism. So like, you put them together like this, and that's basically what this book is. And I quite liked her approach, and I think I would recommend it to people who are turned off by the KonMari method, because of like the, I guess kind of like that subjective like spark joy, and they don't really connect with that idea. There's a different word I want to use, but I can't think of it. Anyways, that method, that idea. If you know the word that I'm trying to think of, leave it down below. But yeah, I liked it. And this book actually came out well before the KonMari method, so it feels like kind of fresh in that respect, because it's like kind of before the real minimalism trend as we know it today has taken off. So yeah, I liked it. Am I making sense? What? I have to go to my niece's birthday party in like 10 minutes, so I'm trying to hurry up. Okay, the next book that I finished was Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix by J.K. Rowling. And I have a lot of feelings about this book, and most of them are kind of negative. So my caveat is that I am reading this series for the first time as a woman over 30. I did not grow up reading these books, so I was never able to put myself as a teenager in the place of teenage Harry. So, my problem with this book is that obviously things are very bad. This is the 5th book, and they are fighting evil. The evil dark wizard, Voldemort, and there are adults in this book who are so neglectful of these children. Literally, an evil wizard is trying to kill Harry over the whole series, and the adults are not doing literally everything physically possible to protect these children from these evil wizards. And I was just mad the whole time. And something happened in the previous book, I won't spoil it, something happened in the previous book that Harry clearly has PTSD from. No one's giving him counseling. No one's helping him. No one's being like, hey Harry, how are you doing after this traumatic event that everyone in the school saw? How are you doing after being a first-hand witness to this event? And I'm just such an adult that I could not enjoy this book at all. I was just basically mad the whole time. So that is my story about this. Don't at me, okay? Like, I know if I had read this as a younger person, I'm literally twice the age that I should be reading this the first time, I would have liked it. But now I just see that problem, and that's just all that it is. I am an adult, and now I side with the adults. So that's my problem with that book. I'm still going to finish the series. I still got 2 more books. I plan to finish them yet this winter. So yeah, that's where I'm at. So we're just going to move on from the Harry Potter. And I will tell you about the next book that I finished, which was a short story actually. And it was The Gift of the Magi by O. Henry. And this is a very classic, well-known Christmas story. So I was starting with the Christmas stories after I finished Harry Potter. Yeah. And basically it's a short story of a couple who are newly-ish married, and they love each other very much, but they're very poor, and so it's about their attempts to buy each other something for Christmas that will show the other person how special they are. And I very much enjoyed this story, and I'm glad that I read it. That's all I'm gonna say. I just really liked it. The next book that I finished was Christmas Shopaholic by Sophie Kinsella, and I borrowed that from the library and obviously have long since brought it back. Let's have some more peppermint mocha. Obviously I need it. So this is like the 9th book in the Shopaholic series. I thought after the last one that she was done. And I don't know why. Just something about it felt kind of final to me. And maybe it was supposed to be the last one. But obviously there was another one. So basically, Becky, she's up to her antics and shopping and lots of things. And it was fun. It was cute. I liked it more than some of the other books in the past. Because not everything is like miscommunication at this point. Like there's still like some miscommunication, plot advancing. That didn't make sense. Wow, I need to film more videos so that I have the right words in my head. It wasn't as aggravating as some of the past books have been. So overall, I enjoyed it. Alright, the next book that I finished was The Christmas Hirelings by Mary Elizabeth Braddon. And this was an audiobook narrated by Richard Armitage. And it doesn't have very high ratings on Goodreads. Like I think it's like just over 3. I enjoyed it. It's maybe a novella. The audiobook was like 4 hours. So however many pages that is. And it's about this man who is rich and lonely in his house, and his butler convinces him to hire a group of siblings to spend Christmas with him to make it more festive. And I will say about Richard Armitage, somehow we all know what he sounds like, right? He has like this nice low voice, and there was a 4-year-old girl character in the book, and somehow he could voice a 4-year-old girl and not sound ridiculous. I was so impressed. Like, honestly, that was like the best part of the book for me. I was so impressed. Overall, very enjoyable for me. Would read again. The next book that I finished was The Parisian Christmas Bake Off by Jenny Oliver. And I got this years ago as a free ebook for my Kindle. So I read it on my Kindle. It's about a woman who participates in a baking competition at Christmas. It's not a Christmas themed competition, which maybe I thought would be, but that's not the case. It's just about this well-known baker is looking for an apprentice, so he has a competition, and she goes to Paris and does the competition. And it was just like a Hallmark movie, very cute. There were like some plot points that I didn't jive with, but typical. Yeah, overall, if you could get it for free, sure, read it. Okay, the next book that I finished was totally different, and it's Blowout by Rachel Maddow. And I actually listened to the audiobook, which was narrated by the author. And I picked it up because she was on Jimmy Fallon talking about her book. And I was like, I need to read this because I know absolutely nothing about the oil corporation. The oil corporation. Does that make sense? No. What's the word that I want? The oil industry. Things are going well right now. Okay. It was very timely that this book came out at the time that Trump was getting impeached, which relates to what this book is about. So it's about the oil industry and why, eventually leads up to why Russia would care about who won the presidential election in the United States. And I mean, I will say, okay, there was lots of information, so I don't remember like all of the details perfectly, but like I got a pretty good gist. So is it Russia? Now I'm like, am I being dumb? Is it Russia? I think it was Russia. She did talk about Russia an awful lot. But yeah, anyways. So like I'm really glad that I read it. It was totally out of my comfort zone. And I ended up really enjoying it. And like her narration was very we have a similar sense of humor, I think, very like dry and sarcastic. So yeah, it was good. I mean, good. It made me mad a lot. Makes me want to not drive a car anymore, but whatever. That's not here or there. Let's talk about a good book. Another good book about a happy thing that I read, which is Christmas at the Final Cafe by Stuart McLean. This is a collection of probably not all, but a good majority of the Christmas stories set in the Final Cafe world. I've read some of these before. I have heard the productions of these. Stuart McLean, this started out as a radio show, so he would tell these stories on the radio, and then he also would write them. And I think some of them were performed on radio that weren't written, and vice versa. But yeah, so this features like all the classic Christmas stories, and I absolutely loved it. So the Final Cafe, if you're not familiar, is very Canadian. The main character is Dave. He lives in Toronto suburbs, I think, and he owns a vinyl store, the Vinyl Cafe, and it follows basically him and his family, his wife Morley, and his kids Sam and Stephanie, and their friends and neighbors and family and their antics, and it's just absolutely delightful and wholesome, and I love it. I love Stuart McLean. Okay, two more quick. This was on December 31st, and I wanted to get to 100 books because I was at like 97 books on my Goodreads. So what I did was I listened to an audible production of classic love poems by lots of poets, read by Richard Armitage. And it was good. It was like 20 minutes of love poems. That's all I have to say. And then I listened to The Chimes by Charles Dickens, also narrated by Richard Armitage. And I'm going to be honest, I did not fully listen to this book because I'm not 100% sure what it was about. There's a guy, his daughter's going to get married, there were ghosts, but yeah, I'm counting it as read. So that was my 100th book, so there we go. So I did actually... And then I was a fart, and I added 2 kids' books because, and then I got to 101. Should I tell you the kids' books that I read? Yeah, I will. Okay. I bought this one on Book Outlet just because of the title. Extra Yarn. Okay. So cute. So it's by Mac Barnett, illustrated by John Clausen. And it's just absolutely the cutest art style. And it's about a girl who finds this magic ball of yarn, and she knits everyone in her town sweaters. I loved it. And then my sister-in-law gave me and Chris this book for Christmas because she buys the same book for every family. So we always get a book too, even though we don't have kids yet. A Perfectly Messed Up Story by Patrick McDonnell. Is he the illustrator also? Yes. So this is about this little boy. I think his name's Louie. Yeah, Louie. And it's a very fun book. It's like kind of interactive story. And it's kind of about how life just doesn't always go perfect. So I would recommend this one too. So there's some kids books for you. And like, I don't even have kids. Okay, so those are the books that I read. I need to go to my niece's birthday party. So if you've read any of these books, let me know your thoughts. I will be back soon with some goals and wrap-ups and probably a knitting content video as well. And I hope that you'll have a wonderful day. Thank you very much for watching this terrible video. And until next time, so long, and thanks for all the fish.